Hello there, whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever you are. It's Addison, your friendly favourite furball who hangs around the internet, back again with an episode of the Pod of Many Things. And today we're making the pod a family affair. We're showing nepotism at its finest as I've got my little brother Zachary on with me today, and we're going to be talking about a topic that is more his specialty than mine, in the fact that we are going to be talking about sports and sport in general, sports psychology, and then maybe I'll send him away with some sports anime to watch, and yeah, we'll see what happens and see what's going on. So, Zachary, how are you?
Very well, thank you. How's it going?
I'm all right. I'm good. Um, so, for those people who don't know you, because obviously I've known you quite intimately for many years, um,
Solid 21 years maybe.
it's only 21 years, yeah. Um, how about you tell us about yourself, what you do, all that jazz?
So I'm a student at the University of Greenwich studying sports science, hence the podcast topic. Um, I also do a bit of football coaching, so I have done for about 5 years now, coaching grassroots football in South East London with a grassroots team and Charlton's Athletic. Sorry about that. Charlton Athletics Community Trust.
Hmm. That's cool. And so you're 21. You're a young man, finding your way in the world. How's that been?
Yeah, it's been good. It's been good. To be honest, I think the environment that you're in as a football coach and sort of what you follow on social media and stuff is quite a motivating environment. So it's quite nice. Been quite
Mm.
productive, learning a lot.
Admittedly, tabletop RPG Twitter is like the only part of Twitter I ever want to partake in again. Like it's so positive and everybody's like gassing each other up and we all talk to each other with respect. And then you go into normal Twitter and you're just like, I hate it here. I want to leave.
Yeah, I was going to say sport isn't exactly always the nicest place to be.
No.
But there are just some funny pages like Secret Grassroots Football Coach thing, and it's just like, right, we're back from a year of lockdown. It's time to do the bleep test and scream at your kids this session. Just
Oh no,
so
not the bleep test.
brilliant. I've never done a bleep test in my life, but
So I think the best place to start is the start because obviously as we grew up together, like it's quite a significant age gap, but like I remember you when you were younger as being like quite a pudgy kid, bless you, long hair, glasses. Um, we weren't sure that you could walk in a straight line, let alone run. Um, and then
so what you're saying is a physical specimen. Is that what
you
you're
were a
saying?
complete specimen. You were
Destined
built
for an
different.
Olympic success.
You were built different, my friend. But yeah, and then you've grown up. Puberty hit you like a truck. You've lost a lot of weight. You've become more physically fit and more physically active. Um, what drew you towards sport then? Because like you were quite nerdy and like you like kicked a ball about in terms of like um socially, but you weren't like majoring. You never seemed to be like major into sports. So what kicked that off? What kicked off that passion that's making you like now pursue a career as a coach and coaching kids and stuff like that?
I mean, it was my main form of being social, even at that age. You know, it was the classic fat kid in goal when we went to the park, and you know that was brilliant. It was like great environment to learn, just play. You know, we directed ourselves. We decided what we were going to do. We could be out for hours in the summer.
Mm.
Um, so obviously created, you know, a bit of a passion, which turned into watching on the TV. Things like I remember the 2010 World Cup being quite a big thing for me, watching you know as many games as I could and learning about the teams and collecting like match attacks and all the sticker books and you know that's another social thing. Um, then when I went to secondary school, went to a new school, didn't know anyone, and it was more about being on the team to be social. So that got
Mm.
me a bit more competitive and talking to people and meeting new friends. So I'd say that's where it started, at least. And then started playing more competitive around year 9, 14, 15.
Mm.
that was fun. A few years of just being really competitive.
Yeah, we always knew when you'd lost a match because of the fact that you'd come home like
Oh,
proper.
miserable.
Yeah, someone would have done something wrong. We had no idea what they'd done wrong, but they'd done something wrong.
Yeah, and in fairness, I was quite self-critical as well. I think it's
Hmm,
probably one of my worst traits.
I think uh, that seems to be an inherited trait. I don't know why. But yeah, no. So, and it is kind of strange because you didn't really have like sportsmen to like in our family. Like
No, no, no.
I played rugby for a bit to be with my mates and have a bit of a laugh and stuff like that. And it was a game that allowed me to get my frustration out. And obviously, my dad was a martial artist, and I did martial arts and like combat sports, like a little bit of boxing here and there, but mainly martial arts and rugby. So it just seemed a bit strange out of nowhere. Like, and as a big brother, sometimes this happens. It just seems as if out of nowhere you've grown up and you've become a bloke and you do sports and sports is your passion and you want to coach and stuff like that. So is is it just football or is it all sports? Like, is there like multiple sports that you want to look at?
So in terms of watching and learning about sport, I'd say it's really comprehensive. I want to see everything and take little things,
Hmm.
because I think coaching is really like transferable across because it's working with people. You look at like teaching, it's working with people, how people learn, how to communicate, how to manage behavior sometimes, how to manage expectations. Um, and sometimes football isn't always going to be the best at everything, you know.
No.
So I've been watching a lot of netball recently, actually.
Hmm.
It's free on YouTube, the Women's Super League.
Hmm.
And also I've got a friend who plays for London Pulse,
Oh,
well,
cool.
like a girl from my school. And like looking at it, it's basically the same principles as you see in any team sport. Things like creating space, speed of the ball, like autonomous decision making, being better than your opponent 1v1. And, it's transferable across every sport like rugby.
Mm.
You might, have to create space in the line out. You've got to be able to cut past someone 1v1. Um, I think the principle's always going to be the same. So it's how you work with people that are going to make the difference, really.
Yeah, because I coached and instructed as a martial artist because I got my black belt, and I've always found that the lessons I learned as an instructor doing those courses, like learning from my dad and stuff, were have made me into the teacher I am today. You can cross that off your bingo cards, podcast listeners. Anderson mentions is a teacher today. Um, but also as well, I feel as if you're right. A lot of the things are transferable. I always remember going to watch my friend Zach. Funnily enough, not you, but my friend Zach go play badminton at Oxford Brookes for varsity, and they weren't having a good game. And he like came up to me and was like whinging, and I don't know what I did, but I just went into coach mode, and everybody like was really surprised at me because I went, right, this is what you need to do. And actually, the advice I gave worked, and worked to the point where they made like a little bit of a comeback. And I was like, oh, okay. Like I would have thought that this wasn't actually applicable, but so I feel as if like yeah, if you taking in that knowledge from a range of different sports is important, and I think that a lot of it is transferable, like you said, in terms of decision making, communication, and stuff like that. What sports do you think have like the highest skill ceiling? Like, what sports are you there? Like, oh, the skill levels in this are like insane. That is hard to replicate
um,
across all sports.
I think there's quite a few. I think gymnastics is one
Mm-hmm.
because it's the manipulation of your body at such like power and speed is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
When you're being marked on like pointed toes and you're landing after a flip or something, it's I think that's incredible, and I love watching gymnastics.
Mm.
I think when I was watching the Michael Jordan basketball documentary on Netflix.
I need to. I watched some of that with my class, and I need to finish it now because I'm like,
Yeah,
this is
it's
sick.
excellent. It's definitely worth. But like how they manipulated the ball and like the dexterity and like one single-handed catches and like how it just maneuvered was incredible as well. Like
Mm.
the speed of the ball and I don't know. It's just that's always resonated with me. Um, we think I think things like tennis as well.
I was going to say tennis is something that I've always thought like everybody can have a mess about at tennis, but it's really
Yeah,
hard to be good at tennis. Like you're seeing Djokovic hit that on a serve at almost 200 miles an hour, and you're like, oh no, I've got to stand. Somebody's got to stand in front of that and hit that back.
and then
Like,
return with a bit of topspin or backspin or however they do
yeah,
it, and like, with a bit of skill as well. It's
and
incredible.
they've got to think about like, oh, I'm playing on clay today, so this is going to bounce a little bit that way, or
Yeah,
grass. So I've got. So yeah, I've always thought the skill ceiling in tennis is like really high, with for what looks like a simple sport. Like,
yeah, definitely, definitely. As you said, anyone can mess around with tennis and just let it bounce high and just swing at it. But wow, when you watch Wimbledon, it's insane.
yeah, Wimbledon's a totally different ball game. Um, is there any sports that like you've come across in your like studies and like your information gathering, let's say, where you're just like, I have no fucking idea how this works. Like, I don't understand what it is or what it does. Like, what's going on? Because I have one that I've always been a bit like, like, and I don't get it. But have you got any of those?
I think rugby and American football used to be like that for me because they
Oh,
just seem so like they seem like they'd be so simple, and then the referee just keeps blowing his whistle, and you're like, what the heck? Like, especially in rugby, you're like, I have no idea what's going on, and then I sort of learned a little bit, but I still, I still couldn't tell you what the referee's calling for most of
hmm.
the time. Um, American football's the same, but I think it's just more frustration on my part. I don't really want to learn it because it's so annoying that they just keep cutting to adverts and analysis every play.
Mm-hmm.
It really annoys me. Like in American sport in general, I think that's quite a big thing.
Yeah, they I think basketball doesn't do it as much because of like how frenetic and fast it is. But a lot of American sports are stop start, like
Yeah, but even just
hockey.
like a little advert before a free throw
Yeah,
or timeout and stuff. Yeah,
yeah.
hockey.
You've got like hockey and because you've got so many teams as well. Like in American football, like I follow American football. Like you've got your defensive line, your offensive line, and your special team. And like when you look at how many, that's like almost 60 people on one team. That
Yeah,
and they get subbed out like entirely, like to deal with stuff. Like it's insane. So yeah, I can get that. Mine's badminton.
yeah. It's only if I get the specials teams. I
Yeah,
understand there's something to do with, let's do something to do with kicking, but I don't know what else they do.
yeah.
Like,
It's basically any special tactics that your team goes for. But yeah,
okay,
my sport that I just genuinely don't understand is badminton. Like I don't understand badminton. I don't. Everybody's like, it's just tennis but floaty. I'm like, but it's not though, is it? Like there's like, and I did for a long time not get netball. Like netball has such stringent rules. I thought it was just basketball for girls, and then I realized,
yeah, but
oh no, like it's got like so many stringent rules. If I play
yeah,
this
you get
position,
2 seconds to pass. You can't really touch anyone.
you
Um,
you can't go
like a little,
anywhere.
yeah, yeah, and like certain positions have to stay in certain zones, and
Yeah, like
it's
that was
crazy.
my
Only 3 people are
frustration.
allowed to be from each team, and
Yeah, that was my frustration is when I played netball was the fact that I kept getting told off and going into the wrong place. I was like, I've literally moved one step to the side. Leave me alone. Like, um, but yeah, no, sports really interesting. So I've mainly followed like combat and contact sports. So you kind of called me out for rugby, NFL, UFC, boxing, and stuff like that. Those are my sports that I follow. Whereas you follow like more, I would say, more skillful sports in terms of like football. You've said about like netball. What other sports do you follow?
um, So I'm not a massive. I try my best basically. I watched a bit of American football when the season was on,
Hmm.
but again, like, I try my best. Basketball the same. Whenever I see it on TV, gymnastics, netball, rugby, tennis when it's on. Obviously football
Hmm.
and all levels of football. Anything I can watch, youth level, women's, men's,
Your
all across
your
the leagues.
your consumption of football is something that I'm genuinely like, yeah, it's insane. You're like, oh, the Italian league are doing this at the minute. I'm like, no one cares. Like, why are you doing this? But you're like, and like you're like, because I can't remember who you said about. I don't know if it was the Dortmund thing when you had that obsession with Germany, but you kept going on about like players who you think will come over to the Premier League, and then like actually some of them did, and then
Oh, I used to
like,
be obsessed with transfers. That was another thing. I was obsessed with writing lineups for every team in my like the formation I thought they should play in, and I was obsessed with like every new season, like just scratching out the players I didn't like and putting in new players for each team,
mm.
and just trying to guess how much they'd be worth. And yeah, it's quite sad.
But no, if you've got a talent like that, like do it. Because like, do you do fantasy football at all?
Um, yeah, but I'm not. I don't know. I'm not particularly good at it, to be honest.
Or?
It really annoys me because I'm like, I know his stats, but then he just doesn't score on the days I want him to.
It is. I can imagine that is hell of annoying with how like analytical you are of every player and stuff like that. And then you're there like, hang on, what? How comes my team's not doing well? Like, and then it's
Yeah,
like, because
I'm learning Python so I can write a program to do it for me.
oh Jesus. And
Turning to my dad.
I can get you in contact with my friend Ben if you want. He does programming for like some big sites about
Awesome.
odds and stuff like that. So yeah, um, but yeah. So you mentioned you were a coach earlier, and you mainly coach football, um,
Yeah.
and you were thinking about trying to coach in other sports at one point when I was talking to you. Um, you said that coaching is about talking to people, communicating with people, working with people to get the best out of them. Is that your general coaching philosophy, or do you have other things that you?
Um, so, in like a sentence, I sort of describe it as connecting people towards some sort of common goal
Mm-hmm.
and sort of sharing the idea that anything is possible for them, both in that individual game, in their sport, in their life, really. So I try and take quite like a holistic approach, as much as that word is just thrown around all the time, and just try to just be as personal as possible. Just create as much as a fun environment as possible. Because at the end of the day, the kids I'm working with at what I call like a participation level,
Mm-hmm.
they're not at like I'm not coaching an academy, maybe one day, but for the minute, it's very much about their sort of psychosocial development. So I
Mm.
sort of branch out into like leadership, communication, teamwork as like the basics, and all that sort of intricacies come under that really. Um, yeah, fun and friendship, as I mentioned, sort of mental skills that can
Mm.
help them. Things like I follow PCD, psychological characteristics for developing excellence.
Mm-hmm.
So they're using imagery, reflecting, evaluating yourself, attributing your performance to like the right things, so things you can control, rather than the ref was shit today. And I think there's 9 things all to do. So I try and put that into training sessions. Um, I have like a little like in terms of values. I remember making this when I was like 13. It was like called Tick. So tenacity. So I never given up. Intensity. Giving your all. Showing character. So being like a role model of behavior. Working hard and being like a good person, and kindness, just because that's how people work, that's how people connect together and form a social group.
Hmm. That's interesting actually, because like thinking about it, like even in my short tenure as a sportsman, in terms of like rugby and taekwondo as a martial art, it's like those that ethos that you had to have and that mindset that you had to have in those sports like carried me on. So to talk about like the developmental and the holistic approach you take in sport, I think is really important, and it's one of the things that I want to use with my year group in the future, because they can be quite difficult. Like, but I found a few of them who are good at basketball, and like some of
Yeah.
them who are like unexpectedly good at basketball. So I've got like one lad who people would describe as like one of the naughty kids or troubled kids, and
Okay.
actually he's like dangerous from anywhere up to halfway, like in terms of shooting. Like he
Oh
can
wow.
score 3 pointers all day, like, and he's not massively tall or massively athletic. He just like shoots, and most of the time he finds net, swish. Like, so I think that it is really helpful to have like sports in your life, because it gives you that ethos and those tenets. Like in taekwondo, it's courtesy, integrity, perseverance, self-control, and an indomitable spirit. Those 5 things like
Yeah.
become like a core of who you are. Even as a kid, you think about those things and you think about how you want to treat people. Like, you're in control of what you do. Like, don't give up. Like, and all that stuff. So it is really interesting to see like your ethos and like that idea of like we're going towards a common goal, but you've got to give your all. You've got to be this. You've got to be that. Even at such a young age, do you think that like young kids need that in their lives, like those developmental and almost like ethical lessons?
Um, maybe not explicitly.
Mm,
So I don't think they need to be told, all right, this is our new mantra, guys. I want you to hang it up on your wall and remember it for the rest of your life.
mm.
But I think it's about building those like habits and expectations of behavior, and encouraging them to take that into the rest of their life as well. Because it's easy for you to say, "Oh, they're amazing at football," but their parents come and says, "Oh, well, they're not doing it at school," type thing.
Mm.
And so when you're like, I'm looking at the person, not just the person while they're at football.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's definitely important for them to have that ethos, but it doesn't necessarily have to be explicit and really, overly drilled into them by a coach or an adult. It can be creating an environment for them to almost hold themselves accountable to
Mm.
those behaviours.
Do you
So
think?
if
Keep going. Sorry.
no, go on, go on, go on.
I was going to say, like, accountability is something that I did want to talk to you about in terms of like sport, because the attitude of sportsmen in different areas is very different. So, for example, if we use your sport of football and my sport of rugby, like as a 6 foot tall lad, like 16, physically fit, able, I would listen to the bolding 40-year-old man who was 5 foot nothing. Whenever he made a decision, he blew the whistle and he told me I was an idiot, and I'd go, yes, sir, like, and I'd walk away, like, sort of thing. One of the weirdest stories I've ever had is basically the referee blew the whistle, drew me and my uh, team captain over, and basically told my team captain off to in order to for him to tell me, but I was stood there. And like I
Okay.
didn't say anything, like I didn't go, I'm right here or anything like that. He literally went, now tell him. And then my team captain bawled me out in front of everybody and said that the ref's not happy with me because I did this, this, and this. It was mainly because I was disengaging the scrum to like uh, get more force, sort of thing. Um,
Okay.
and he was like, I'm not happy with him. So like, whereas in football, if you were to have that interaction, um, there'd be uproar. Like there'd be people throwing. So do you think accountability is something that's really important in sport?
Yeah, I do, and I think the problem with football is it's such like a toxic culture around football,
Mm.
especially even in grassroots. When you've got like adults or parent coaches or even adult coaches who are getting paid and
Yeah,
they're like all about winning at that age to the point where they're aggressive at the referees, and then again that's not creating an environment to respect referees.
yeah.
And that's because he's the person who's creating that environment for those kids. And
You
I
lead by
think,
example.
yeah, exactly. And I think him not being accountable to himself is letting down those kids type thing, or she, sorry, but it's letting down those kids. And if they do end up becoming professional football, they don't respect the referees. Now it's on TV and it's even more role modelling. So I think
Mm.
it's a really big cycle that's going to take a lot of time to remove from the game.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and I think that's a really interesting insight into the fact that like it's from that level, like because even
Yeah,
parents on the sideline, like in rugby versus football, in rugby when parents are on the sidelines and parent coaches, they tell you off, like they tell you off when you do something wrong, and they
yeah,
tell you to think about what you've done. Whereas in football, they're usually shouting at the ref or like, "Did you see that?" or something. "Did you see that?" Like, do something about that player. Like even at
yeah.
like under 12s level, and you're like, "Oh come
Oh,
on,
mate,
they
even younger as well.
it's
I'm
madness."
in under eights teams, and I get pestered by the parents about like, he didn't play well today. He's not your kid.
Yeah, like
He's not your kid. Leave it out. I'm like, that's one of my big things. Like, don't come talking to me about someone else's kid.
mm.
Like, because it's not called for really.
No, we
Um,
we have the same thing in taekwondo. Like if someone got their ass kicked in a match, you wouldn't then go, "Oh well, that kid didn't perform well." You just leave it. Like you talk about
yeah,
your kid. If another kid didn't have his guard up and got hit by a kick to the head and taken out, that's his problem, right? And his parents will talk to him about that. Like it's not for me unless I directly instruct them and I coach them. Then
yeah,
I need to talk to them about that sort of thing. But yeah,
yeah. I'd rather build like that relationship with the parent where we're working together to help their child rather than working together really poorly to run the team, because that's not going to work, because they're not willing to take that time to do it, and they're just a yapper really.
that unfortunately, like welcome to leadership, my friend, because I'm learning that lesson. Like
I
having
bet
to,
you're going to see parents evenings, right?
yeah, like I've well, even in my new job, it's very different from my old. Like it's not. It is very different from like what I'm used to. Like so, I'm used to. I talk to parents about my subject, my lessons, and I know what happens in my lessons. Therefore, I have all the answers, sort of thing.
Yeah,
Whereas now, because I'm responsible for a year group holistically across the school, I'm like, oh no, I have no idea what's going on in geography. Like I can go have a look. Like, and the parents like, rah! I'm like, I don't know. What do you want me to do here? So yeah, I think that it is very, they are very transferable skills, coaching and teaching. And actually, when you think about it, coaching and teaching are the same thing. Just looking
yeah,
at
definitely.
coaching has more modeling and more exercises in practicality, whereas teaching is about inputting new information and stuff like that.
I
Like,
think it's literally the same. It's just different tool set, really. Like,
mm,
think about it like instead of write a story, I want you to do this passing drill or this certain constraint on a match.
yeah, but
It's like it's just a different
yeah,
toolbox,
I guess so. Yeah, because practice is practice, no matter what it is. Like,
and we're still inputting information, even if it's explicitly. Because I imagine you might still do teaching sessions where you want them to learn implicitly. Sometimes,
yeah,
So yeah, I think they are very, very, very similar, and I'd love to do teaching maybe
you
after university.
from your little bit of spiel that you said about your philosophy, you're very quickly going to rise up the ranks of teaching because you've got the buzzwords down, like accountability, intensity. You're going to be the stereotypical PE teacher who's like senior leadership in their third year or something.
Well, I just did an FA philosophy course, so I hope so.
I like that. So,
No.
is there a like so in your course is there a lot of like sports psychology and philosophy then that you need to like do?
In my uni course, there's not really anything about philosophy. We have a coaching module
Mm-hmm.
which talks about like a lot of it's like S&C, strength and conditioning, to be honest.
Mm.
But we do have a few guest lecturers from Charlton Athletic. Is they're literally like around the corner, their training base. So they've talked about things like talent identification, again S&C, coaching, communication, things like that. But weren't the greatest sessions, but a lot of like some interesting anecdotes from them. In terms of sports psychology, we have some really good lecturers actually. Sort of one's working with a lot of teams around London and Kent, so like the cricket club, football team. Another works with the Paralympic basketball team.
Oh,
He's a pretty solid guy. Seems to just really love his stuff, really know his stuff. So we learn quite a lot from them. Sports psychology is probably one of the best modules for teaching there.
Do you so the thing is with sports psychology that I find really interesting is it wasn't really a thing for a long time, like or it didn't have a name. It always happened. You always talked about like the psychology of winning and like what
Yeah,
you need to think about to be a winner, like
how you
envisioning
need to like
winning.
regulate yourself and how
Yeah,
you need to.
but then it
Yeah,
became like something. It became a thing. Like sports psychology became its own thing. It was no longer like a coach's job, or a coach had that partially, but then now you had like a sports psych on a team. Um, is what do you think about that field? Do you think that's something that people should invest a lot into?
I think it's really beneficial, and it would. I think it would be something I'd go into if it wasn't for the amount of years you have to dedicate to training to be one,
Mm,
and it will maybe be something I do later on. Because I think you do your masters and you do like a few years as a practitioner.
you have to don't you have to be a doctor by the end?
I don't think you. No, I don't think you have to be, but I think it's generally considered a good practice to do so.
Mm,
Um, no, I like them a lot. Sort of a lot of the podcasts I listen to and books I read are sports psychology based. So
mm,
things like the Sports Psych podcast with Dan Abrahams, High Performance podcast with Damien Hughes and Jake Humphreys, guy from BT Sport. Yeah, I'm going to go with BT. So I listen to that quite a lot. A book called Chin Paradox by Steve Peters, really interesting. How I think they're used, I think, isn't perfect. Is doing the one-to-one meetings is fine, like which is commonly used, or group sessions, and like specifically with the sports psych. But I think a lot of the things need to be integrated into the actual football practice or sport practice.
yeah, well you'd think that would be common sense, wouldn't it? If I want people to start thinking in a certain way, they have to all do it at the same time, and it has to be present in everything they do.
Well,
Like,
yeah, you have to have the right environmental cues to think like that,
yeah,
and like, yeah. So I think sports psych should almost be as part of the coaching team,
mm,
help embed in certain principles into each training session, having a focus, and almost given more as like a facilitator role to give the coach the tools to then challenge his players psychologically.
mm, yeah, definitely, because that would make it more like because at the moment from what you see and what you hear, like it's almost like being sent to the sports psychs like like you've been naughty or something. Like
Yeah, it's almost like after a big blowout, big flare up on the training pitch, he's got angry or he's got a red card. It's like, oh, send to sports psych and he'll come back brand new.
yeah, like which we know in terms of mental health anyway isn't how that works. Like if someone's unhappy, you need to get to the root of the problem. But yeah, that's really
Yeah.
interesting when you think about it like that. So yeah. Um, in terms of like recent sporting events, we've obviously had White versus Povetkin 2 in terms of boxing, which was I saw the knockout and he literally folded the guy in half. It looked rancid. Like and we've had some major fights. Uh, Football's on international break at the minute. If I'm
Yeah,
right.
so England played Poland, Albania, and San Marino.
What today or in one day? Like,
Yeah. No, over sort of the past week, give or take.
and how are they doing? What are they looking
Yeah,
like?
3 matches in the last. Well, they won all their matches. Won all their matches.
It's the dude with the waistcoat still
A
in.
few good performances. We had quite a few injuries going into it.
Fair enough.
Yeah, Gareth Southgate. Yeah, he's still in charge.
Like, yeah,
The classic
because
World Cup photo, wasn't it?
yeah, because what's his name tried to replicate it. I can't remember if it was the under-21s coach or the women's coach tried to replicate it as well. Like,
I think it might have been when Phil Neville was the women's coach.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I think
Um,
that was him.
so, are you hopeful for the England side this year? Like with because the what I've always felt like with English football is there was like this this bastion of great players who were like the best players. So you've got your Beckhams, your Owens, your Coles and stuff, and your John Terrys
Yeah,
in that one squad, that one super squad, and they all hated each other because they played for different teams. But
yeah,
and then after that, it's almost like England, the FA went, oh shit, we've got nothing after this. Well, as they started leaving one by one, it was like, oh no, we've literally got no replacements for them. So, do you think that England's doing a better job of like homegrown talent now, or
yeah. I was actually reading about this probably a couple of months ago. Basically, our old youth system was based on a really limited piece of research saying that the majority of goals came from under free passes.
hmm.
So what that turned into was long ball FC, big man and little man up front, playing long balls, playing direct football, which is essentially what English football looked like up until really maybe even the 2010s
Mm,
when saw Barcelona's sextuple win when they won 6 trophies in one season, and Spain won the European Championship in 2008, 2012, and 2010, playing sort of possession football.
yeah,
And sort of maybe a few, I think I can't quite, I don't really know the timeline off by heart, but sort of a few years after that, in came things like the FA DNA, uh, more coach education, better coach education. Things like the level 1, level 2 were sort of either introduced or revamped, things like that. So they have all, and to be honest, the level 1 I did is already 2 versions behind what's being introduced now.
oh,
It's really involving and learning all the time and bringing in really good people by the sounds of it. So I
nice,
definitely think we're doing a better job
yeah.
as a country.
But so because like obviously you have the homegrown rule in the UK, which is do we still
And
have
in the
that?
majority of Europe, it's a UEFA rule.
There's the UEFA rule. So we've got the homegrown rule, which is what 60% of your team needs to be native to the country or something like that.
I think in there it's eight homegrown out of a squad of 25, but that doesn't include under 21s.
Because I think this is a problem that a lot of rugby's never really suffered from it. So I've never really got it, but like the importing of players and stuff like that is prolific in a lot of sports that aren't like
Yeah.
contact based, or so like football, basketball is another one where a lot of players are imported from like Spain and stuff like that. Uh, how do you think that affects the game of a country and of a how does that affect a sport when you've got all these players just moving around the place all the time?
I think it's an interesting one because you can argue that bringing in lots of international players does improve the level of the game
Mm.
because it's obviously you're just picking the best players from a bigger selection.
Hmm.
But for the national game, that does then limit chances for
Mm.
young players to make their debuts and it also skyrockets the price. So we see English players going for phenomenal prices because maybe it's the homegrown one, but more because it's such a commodity to have a top English player. And I think you
Yeah,
see Harry Maguire moving to Manchester United for 80 million as a very good player, but not worth 80 million pound.
we see this, and I wanted to come on to this and ask you your opinion. We see this in esports quite a lot, so in things like League of Legends, Overwatch League, and stuff like that, like video
Yeah,
game sports, where native talent can skyrocket their price up because of things like the import rule in League of Legends. So you can only have two
mm-hmm.
imported players. So like mediocre American players are one getting the opportunity to play professionally and are being paid mega money because of the fact that organizations are desperate for those players. Like and even players who have become what they call naturalized, so players who are now count as domesticated players.
Is it
Um,
like players who get like green cards and things
yeah,
like that? Yeah,
yeah,
get citizenship.
yeah. They're
Yeah, we didn't play in football.
like some of them are like stealing paychecks in League of Legends at the minute. Like
Mm.
absolutely, like just they're like, yeah, I'll be transferred for like 40 million, like because because I wanted to ask you about esports actually because esports has evolved so much. What's your opinion on esports? Because they've got coaches, they've got sports psychs, they've got um, dietitians and all that jazz. Um, what do you think about that?
I find it very. Give me one sec. I find it really interesting, to be honest. So I played a bit of League of Legends, and I obviously played it with you,
Mhm.
and enjoyed it and watched like the LCS and Worlds and stuff like that. And obviously, as an entertainment industry, they're bringing in that money to do that. And I think when it becomes into sport like that and they're investing into the sport, it's nice to see. It's quite supporting that idea of having multidisciplinary teams behind top level performers. I didn't want to say athletes, but like top level performers. And I think obviously a very different approach, like nutrition, for example. I imagine probably as I think your brain completely changes its composition over like a month period.
Mm.
So all the proteins in it have completely broke down and rebuilt itself over quite a small time period. So I imagine nutrition is really important, and psychology is obviously going to be really important when you get those clutch plays, those reactions. If you're losing, trying to think, if you're losing 2-0, it's first to three, isn't it?
Depends, but yeah, first three we'll say.
Right. In a first to three, if you're losing 2-0, you're going to be bricking it. That's sports psychology training. Yeah, it could be beneficial.
Yeah, you can do things like the miraculous reverse sweep and stuff if you've got that mental.
Yeah,
But because they've evolved so much now. They've franchised the league, so it's like an actual franchise. They're building like these state of the art training facilities and going to stadiums. The Overwatch League actually had the home stand model, which in the current climate kind of shat the bed a bit. But basically, in Overwatch League, what they were trying to do is each major city in the world would have a team,
yeah,
and then you would go to that arena. They'd all have an arena, that they played in, and you go to that arena
Yeah.
and play at that arena. Like, so
That's awesome.
yeah, like, so it's becoming like this thing that people are spending millions on.
It's definitely something I'd like to jump on.
Yeah,
I love that like, really growing financial market.
yeah. The problem with Overwatch League though is, one, the players aren't that great anymore, and two, it's gone down the pan with COVID, because of obviously you can't have home stands and stuff like that. So this model that
Yeah.
everybody's bought into and paid, because people are paying to be in these franchises as well, like 20 million, 20, 25 million to be in these franchises, like to just play in this league. It's
Yeah.
insane. Like,
It's
but it,
similar to like the MLS model, isn't it, in
yeah,
football? And I think is the NFL the same? You have to
yeah,
buy a yeah.
because like, what do you think about Americans? Because like it takes on a very American sports model of like no one ever gets relegated and rah rah rah. Um, Nobody has to play for their life basically. Um, what's your opinion on that? The fact that in those franchise sports, and it does seem like that's the way that sports are going. Even the more whatchamacallit sports, less lower profile sports that are gaining following. So things like volleyball, for example, are beginning to
Hmm.
go down that like American franchise esque route. How does that make you feel, thinking about like the fact that nobody would get relegated, etc., etc.?
I think relegation and promotion are some of my favourite things, to be honest.
I think they're necessary. Like,
Because you get those sort of stories of Southampton or Bournemouth going from League One, League Two to the Premier League, and like completely revamping their finances just because of what they did on the pitch,
Leicester,
and they've learned to do it. And Leicester, exactly,
yeah,
coming from being promoted few seasons, they'd won the league
yeah.
completely out of the blue. And
Watching people in League of Legends even play for their lives, like there was something
yeah,
different. The fact that relegations were happening, and like you watch these pros literally play for their lives. If they demoted, that might be them forever. Like they've got a year to get back, and if not, what happens then? Um, so I think it's really important, but for some reason, American sports doesn't do that. I don't know why.
I think it's a classic like protecting your money and getting all the money towards a small group of clubs.
Mm,
Because if you look in the Premier League, you get teams like Sunderland, pretty decent Premiership side, always around the bottom, relegated. Now they're in League One, maybe even League Two, or close to being relegated, struggling financially. So you think if you imagine like I don't know, a New York City Red Bulls, or no, a New York Red Bulls or a New York City getting relegated. That's probably not even the best example because they're quite new clubs, but big clubs, big financially, and then struggling. There's a relegation, it'd be quite pride here, I think.
yeah,
And I think,
because obviously when you go down leagues, like player salary caps go down and stuff like that, and
yeah, and you get less sponsorship. There's not as many matches on TV,
mm,
not as much media coverage.
so yeah, you have to protect your assets, I guess, and
Yeah, I think also because on those leagues, I think the clubs have a more um, buy-in, no, like more clout in terms of what the league does
mm,
and the league regulations and how the league works. Whereas in the Premier League, like the clubs get to vote, but they don't really, they're not in massive control of things.
yeah, that's a good point actually. In the franchise leagues, like team owners can turn up and go, "No, I don't like that." Like, whereas in like the Premier
It's
League,
almost like a board of directors, aren't they?
yeah,
Really, because they're buying into the franchise.
yeah. Whereas in the Premier League, when the Premier League makes a decision, you you you
Yeah,
you adapt, overcome, and survive or die. Like, and that happens
we'll get
sometimes.
out of it like someone like Man City.
Yeah, or you just have like oil money coming out your ears. Yeah.
Yeah, and
What do you
we've
think
been
of?
the fire of
Sorry,
state
you go
funding.
first.
Just saying, Man City got investigated recently for basically giving because they're basically owned by I think Saudi Arabia,
Yeah.
or one an oil nation, and it might be Qatar. Basically, just owned by the nation. I think it's one of their princes, and basically they had companies sponsoring that were state owned. So what you're basically just investing your country into this football club.
That's insane.
But they didn't find any proof, so and obviously they denied it.
One thing I will give America chops for is their collegiate system, though. Like
Oh, I love it.
the
That is
collegiate system and
I love the way.
the draft system in American sports is like
Mm.
god tier. Like one of the things I love about NFL is draft day. I love draft day. Like it's just so good. You're just there like, what happens if someone else takes our player first though? Like, oh, what if they decline our offer and go to someone else? Because in the NFL you send them a helmet and then like
Yeah.
you go, we draft this person and they have the opportunity to refuse. Like
Mm.
so you hope to dear God that you've secured that beforehand. But like, and it's always just really tense because you're also looking at your opponents like, so who are you? Oh, you need a new QB, you need a new quarterback. So these are the good quarterbacks in the draft. You're here in the draft, so where are you gonna? When are you gonna get them? Because somebody else is gonna pick that up before you. Like,
Yeah.
it's such a strategic fucking mind game because, as well, I know although I don't understand it 100%, but the fact that the worst performing teams get earlier points in the draft
Yeah, I like that as well.
because you can also trade your draft space, can't you? In American sports, like you can trade your draft space, so
Yeah.
you can trade your draft pick for a player or something like that. They do it all the time. It's just insane. But yeah, like, so what do you think about the collegiate system in America? And do you like you say it's god tier, like, or that it's good? Do you think that's something we should emulate in the UK?
Yeah, I adore it, to be honest, because when you look at sport here, we're trying to get them into, professional football academies. I think the youngest they can join an academy is under 9, right? So they're 8 years old into a professional performance environment. And even before then, there's development centres, pre-academies where they can go to from being a toddler.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, that takes up most of their week, or, a few nights a week, a Saturday morning. And I think I'm really conscious of when people early specialize in a sport or even in any task, any like activity, if one becomes a massive part of their identity. So when it becomes something like football, if their identity is become a professional footballer and they get dropped out of an academy, mental health destroyed.
Mm.
Hence why recently there's a lad who got dropped out of Manchester City's academy and committed suicide. I was in the news, in absolute uproar, and now you see mental health specialists in every football club.
I
As
also
recently
think
as
that with the academy system in the UK, like people don't understand how important it is. Like, so as an educator, I get kids turn around to me all the time and go, "I want to be a professional footballer or a basketball player or something." And I'm like, "Do you play for the local team?" And they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Do you play for county?" No. Have you ever went for a trial for county? No. Have you ever played on an academy team? No. Like they don't know that those things are really important. Like that information isn't out there. It seems
yeah,
like it's only available to the select few. Um, so do you think that's also if we had a collegiate system like the US where it's possible that football and stuff will take you places, but to be on the football team you have to get good grades and whatnot.
yeah,
Um,
I'd love to see it as things like a local football club really investing into its community in terms of schools.
hmm,
So having you know academy coaches as PE staff.
hmm,
Because for one, it's a higher quality of service for the school,
hmm.
and for two, academy coaches are paid really poorly. Like I think I saw one advertised part time. So most of them are part time until you've been working for about 10 years,
Yeah.
and they're sort of don't know, about 13, 14, 15k a year.
And that's
So you have to have multiple jobs
yeah,
to be a coach. So I think if
so.
you're working as a teacher, at least you've got a bit more of a stable salary. Maybe obviously, yeah, but I think it would just be good for every party, and you'd have the club invest into the community. One, they'd know about every kid in their community because they're investing in schools. They've got an actual, and then they can compete against each other. They compete on county level, uh, regional level, national level, whatever. They can go up the same way, and they can do the same with universities as well. But already most clubs have got partnerships with universities for work placement students. They could do the same with having a more vested interest in the university team. So I think it could be quite easily done to turn into the collegiate system. It would just take, obviously, a complete overhaul and really invest in resources into schools and public sector rather than themselves and the academy.
Yeah, it would be about just being honest and saying like this is going to take time, but it will get that
Yeah,
information out there to those people who want it, and like those kids who want to be professional footballers will know how to get there because those people are linked to their schools and stuff like that.
yeah,
Whereas
absolutely. I think,
whereas now it's just like if I'm lucky, the county trials will be at a time when I can go.
yeah, or you might get lucky that a certain scout was there to watch me when he was meant to be watching someone else or
Yeah,
stuff like that.
because yeah, it's a lot of the time it's the parents who reach out to scouts and stuff at the minute, like,
Yeah,
and it's about just doesn't
or
sit.
agencies, which is even worse.
Yeah, it doesn't sit right with me. Like as an educator, like everybody should, like for example, the kid that I was talking about in basketball, like kid is dangerous from anywhere on the court, and nobody would know. The only reason I know that is because he was in school during lockdown, and I was in school during lockdown, and I was on duty, so I just used to play basketball with the kids who were in the provision,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
like he's there, like wrecking me and one of the other blokes that I work with, who is a sportsman, whereas I
yeah.
just play basketball for fun. Like he's there, like, oh, okay, whatever. I'll jump up to get it, and he'll wait for me to jump. Like he knows when to shoot. Like he's
Yeah.
like, and he just
Especially
knows.
considering you're a 6'4"
Yeah,
broad unit.
yeah. Like I
Ball
jump to
blocking
block his
as
shot, and he
well.
just waits, and then goes, oh, cool, and then
Yeah,
most
like a
yeah,
little feint, drawing a jump.
yeah.
Yeah, like
And so he knows, and like to have that smarts of the game, no one would know that unless they
yeah,
played the game with him. And like, so I'm going to try and use that after Easter and try and get the basketball team going. But yeah, no, because sports are allowed hopefully after half term. Well,
no,
after
outdoor
Easter.
sports are allowed from Monday,
Yeah.
last Monday. Yeah.
So yeah. So well, this has been a good episode. We've talked about your coaching philosophy and stuff. Let's talk about like representation of sports and the sports lifestyle in like popular media. So we're talking about films. My favorite is the sports anime. I fucking love a good sports anime.
Before you'd say that,
Um, so, are there any films that you've watched, or any films that you like about sport that you're like, nah, this is it. This is the best sports movie ever. Or is there a sports anime?
So I made a little list of other media. So I had a little sport spider diagram, right?
Yeah,
And so first of all, I'll start with films. So I put movies and documentaries together
yeah,
because
that's fine.
documentaries are massive.
Mm,
I mean, I think they're great, to be honest. Like Amazon Prime, All or Nothing.
I've not seen
You know,
that. Is that good?
the American football ones, they're really good. But they've also done it for the New Zealand rugby team, the All
Mm.
Blacks. Awesome. And the book by James Kerr, Legacy.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a must read. We've done on Man City, Tottenham, and Brazil football teams. That's just really good, really nice insight. Not as detailed as I'd like, because it's definitely more of like an entertainment thing, but
Mm.
awesome, really cool. Movies, I think for me, so there's two. So there's Rocky,
Rocky.
which are
Yep.
just my favorite. Rocky and Creed series, just my favorite movies ever. To be honest, if I'm ever in a bad mood, honestly, I think I watched Creed 2 at uni last year. I was struggling to sleep last year at uni, and I just used to watch Creed 2 at like 2, 3, 4 in the morning. Wake up stay up for a run at 5 or 6, doing all day at uni, and then go sleep in the afternoon. And it was just brilliant. Honestly, I was at such a happy place just by sleeping like an absolute bed. But they're amazing movies. So inspiring. I love the sound. I listen to the do do do. Honestly, it's brilliant. I can't sing for shit. It's awesome. It's awesome. And then other than that, in terms of like a movie genre, football hooligan movies.
Football hooligan movies, so not even about the actual sport. Just like
I think you probably see about 2 minutes of football action in between Green Street and Football Factory. You probably see about 2 minutes of football, but they're classic films.
Green Street.
Brilliant film.
Green Street's the best one out of the two, like
Oh yeah,
undeniably. But yeah,
TSE.
I would have thought that you'd have like more like. So my go-to like sports film, whenever I think about sports, I've got two as well. And mine are Coach Carter, which is just
Yes,
banger,
I love that.
absolute wall-to-wall
yeah.
banger. And the other one is the Mighty Ducks, like because
What good is that one?
Mighty Ducks is about hockey. It's about ice
Okay.
hockey, and it's about kids playing ice hockey. But like it actually became like an NFL team, an NHL team.
Oh, wicked.
So basically, Disney invested in this NHL team, and it's still a team. And if you ever played the NHL games, you could play as the Mighty Ducks, so you felt like fucking invincible. So those were cool films. What other media have you got in terms of? Because Coach Carter, it's just Samuel L. Jackson being the baddest motherfucker in the room.
And I love the message in it.
Yeah.
So when I watched it, I was doing it for like a research purpose. Really, I wanted to look into his coaching style, and I really don't connect with it personally.
Mm-hmm.
But as a watcher, it's amazing. Like the authoritarian conditioning is a reward. Like just really high expectation. It's a brilliant movie. Anyway, so I had things like gaming is massive. So like the FIFA games, NFL games, Madden, NHL, WWE games. I remember we used to play.
Yeah.
To be honest, I've kind of gone off FIFA. Not out of the actual game, but more because I'm still on Xbox 360.
Yeah. Admittedly, my PS4 barely gets
touched.
So. And like even the UFC games are hard work nowadays. Like there's no good boxing games because everybody's under different promoters, so licensing's an issue.
Yeah, no, I don't know what game it was, but I remember I was at a mate's house on his PlayStation and playing. But it was an awesome boxing game. You could like duck, dodge, it was so realistic.
Can't remember what it's called. Fight Night or something, because like you could you have all like good boxing games.
You have the buttons, but a duck, and it was so cool.
Yeah,
like it looked it was like a puppet.
Yeah,
how the controls all worked. Then I had things like anime and cartoons.
Well, anime is a massive one because like if you think of the audience for anime, and in Japan, actually genuinely, certain sports have seen massive upticks in participation because of anime. So
that's really cool.
You've got in the 90s, 80s, you had an anime called Slam Dunk, which was about basketball.
Okay.
And then in the 2010s, you had Kuroko's no Basket or Kuroko's Basketball, which again, basketball. And then you've got other things like my Haikyuu at the minute is like one of the biggest animes in the world, and it's about volleyball. And now Japanese.
Is that Attack on something?
What?
Is that Attack?
No, you're talking about Attack on Titan, which isn't a sports anime.
No. I was googling one earlier, And there was a volleyball one called Attack. Or Attack on Tackler. Give me 1 second.
But yeah, like I'll give you a list of sports anime to watch, but at the end of the podcast, because there's some good
I'd love that. Yeah, no, honestly.
Attack on Titans.
Yeah, Attack on Tomorrow. Ashita Attack.
I've not seen that.
I don't know why I said that.
I need to look at that. Attack on Tomorrow. But yeah, you've got like, so yeah, because even though like a lot of these sports anime risk running into that crazy like Dragon Ball Z-esque power-ups and Naruto-esque like ninjutsu shit, like some of them do like just capture like the sport really well. Do you think that those other mediums like films and stuff and animes and video games are instrumental in stoking a passion for the sport? Or do you think you've got to have it in you?
In terms of, I think in terms of passion of the sport as a consumer, yes. But I think in terms of physical activity, not necessarily. Because I can tell you more people that play FIFA than actually play football physically.
Yeah.
You know, they'll say, "Oh, yeah, I fancy a kickabout," but you know, it'll be one of those. "Oh, no, I'm busy now."
It's not like some of the NFL players who also play Madden like religiously. Like,
yeah, to be fair, you see, I think during the last lockdown, no, not the last lockdown, the first lockdown, the Premier League hosted like a little FIFA tournament instead of the actual league because it was stopped, and it was the actual a player from each team, or sometimes a celebrity supporter, playing FIFA just against each other for everyone to watch on YouTube. And that was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Like, it was really cool. So yeah, I definitely think it can promote the passion for a sport. But that doesn't always correlate to actually physically being active.
Yeah. Because like I said, in Japan they have those massive spikes and stuff for sports, but I don't think in the West we're not that easily influenced to do things. We're not, because of the fact that we're very individualistic rather than collective in terms.
Very little.
Yeah, like whereas in Japan, like because it was part of the public consciousness, like the collective said, like maybe we should do this, like sort of thing. But yeah, if I was to recommend any sports anime, I'd recommend Haikyuu, Kuroko's Basketball. The both of those are on Netflix, so yeah, Haikyuu, Kuroko's Basketball, and then if you can get them, the other ones I'd recommend are Hinamari Zumo, which is about sumo wrestling, and All Out, which is about rugby. So it's about going all out, as they say, in rugby. And then if you want like classic anime, Prince of Tennis is pretty good as well. But yeah, those are dope as fuck.
See, I don't know if it qualifies as anime, but we talked about it the other day. Galactic Football.
Oh, Galactic Football. That was crazy. That was so good.
I was thinking about this the other day because one of my things I really like studying and researching about is like organizational psychology. So like how team culture works and how that contributes to performance. And I was thinking of trying to like find out if you can find anything about the culture of the different teams, like the different forces. And but that might be a future one we talk about.
Yeah, when we rewatch the series or whatever. Yeah.
We just have all these awesome like tabletop RPG podcasts, and would you just be like a random couple of sporty ones?
Yeah, no. Well, it's the point of many things. I get to do what I like. But yeah, thanks for coming on, Zach. We've had a good time. So usually at this point, I do something called the deck of many questions. But the problem is with the deck of many questions, it's geared towards people who play tabletop RPGs. So like, it has loads of Dungeons and Dragons questions and shit like that in it, which you won't be able to answer. Like, so my question to you instead is, there have been multiple fantasy sports that have been like made in films, TV, books, stuff like that. Have you ever looked at a sport in like a film or a TV show or something like that that's not real and went, fuck, that's so cool. If I could compete in that, I would. And what is it?
So I'm thinking of a few. I've got a few. One we just mentioned galactic football, but I'm going to say because of the powers.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, like there's like every planet has like an energy source that you can tap into in galactic football to do like cool acrobatic shit.
Yeah, just flying and doing like proper powerful shots. So.
Yeah.
But I think the one I remember best is I don't even know why I remember it. It's probably the only thing I really remember from the show. Is when the guy did like a rainbow flick over one of the shadow people and then just like crawled through his legs.
Oh yeah.
He was like blue spiky hair, but no, that was cool. So yeah, that, or I think probably a classic one, Quidditch. Potter. I think I'd 100% be Oliver Wood.
You'd be a goalkeeper in Quidditch.
No, just like so passionate about it. Like,
where would you play in Quidditch? Because I know where I'd play, 100%.
Maybe the goalkeeper. Maybe like, is it a beater?
Oh, beater.
Yeah. Smash people up.
No, yeah, that is 100% where I'd play. I'd be a beater every single day. Like if it was like, oh, you can play Quidditch, you can play any position. Do you want to be the seeker? Do you want to win the game, or do you want to stop people from scoring? No, I want to hit the bludgers.
To be honest, I feel quite bad for Hogwarts school sport because they didn't really seem to have a really good like education in Quidditch, did they?
No.
They didn't have like Quidditch sessions from year 7, did they? They just went, oh, Harry flying about, you can go in the team.
Yeah.
Then we only see, I think it's Half-Blood Prince where they finally have a Quidditch trial.
Yeah.
And they're actually in the team now. Like, it's taken them 6 years, mate.
Yeah.
Before.
Yeah, because the thing is, Harry's too young, isn't he? So do you think maybe they have Quidditch lessons in later years? Like
maybe, I guess it's a dangerous sport, isn't it?
Yeah, but yeah, I get you for that. One of my sports that I've always for fantasy sports is Zoids. So the Grand Prix in Zoids, where you just basically battle in giant animal robots. like I'm like, this would be sick. Like and then I think pod racing from Star Wars would be cool as well.
I was literally about to say the same.
Yeah, pod
racing. Literally got it written down. I think it would just be like a DIY F1.
Yeah.
Get some scrap metal from Tatooine and just go.
Just go. I built her myself. Yeah, because that like, and yeah, all these sports are dangerous, obviously, and yada yada. But like, I think it could be sick to have those. Like, they're like, okay, we'll take those. We win.
I guess the equivalent is what's that? Red Bull.
Soapbox derby thing.
Where
they make like ridiculously shaped carts and stuff.
Yeah, like they just make really weird homemade.
Yeah. Because they do the Red Bull air race as well, where they make like crazy planes. Half of them don't fly.
I guess it's actually the equivalent, but if you just decide like a soapbox drag race,
yeah,
that'd be awesome. You're like, mate,
yeah,
maybe we could start it.
We should. That's
go Santa Say, bring your own dragger, bring your own car. Let's go.
Let's go. Yeah. But yeah, no, mine would be very much either racing or it would be like, I think the only other one that I think, because obviously I'm into like combat sports, is I don't know if you've ever seen Legend of Korra, the Legend of Avatar sequel.
No, I haven't.
But pro bending is a thing, so pro like elemental bending like is a thing.
Yeah.
And basically it's about like gaining territory. So if you knock them back into a zone, they lose territory, so they lose resources as well. So like they lose like, I mean, so the earthbenders have like discs that they can like pick up and throw. There's like a water canal and there's like fire behind them, so they can, and basically if you knock somebody back a zone, it ends up that they you can move forward one zone as well. And you're basically trying to push them off the edge. That's pretty sick.
See, I have the most random nerdy thing about Avatar
What's
that goes into sport. So when I play table tennis, I like pick my strategy based on the element.
Really?
So Earth is like planted feet, and I just try and manipulate them. So I just stay in the same place, and I'll hit them to the side, so they have to do like a soft shot, so I can just stay where I am. Fire is like aggressive on every shot, and I even like do the whole breathe out when I shoot, when I hit.
Breath of fire.
Water is loose wrist, so it's just being really flexible around the table, and air is just however I feel.
Are you good at table tennis then? Because I can't play table tennis.
I'm pretty decent. Yeah, I'm not like at special level, but very like competitive social level.
Ping Pong, the animation, is a weird anime that's it's drawn weirdly as well. It's very stylized. It's about ping pong. It's very weird, but fun. But yeah, no. So yeah, that has been our episode on sports and talking about sports and with my brother Zachary. I hope you enjoyed it. Zach, you now get the opportunity to plug yourself because you never know. Somebody might be listening. They might go, you know what? I'm going to hire that man because of his philosophy. So where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Z9Rogers, where I normally just retweet a load of stuff, sort of similar to my philosophy. Instagram, you can find me as Zachary Sagna, which is a nice little pun for Bakary Sagna, the old France right back. Other than that, I'll have to keep you posted on any future plugs.
Fair enough. And as always, I've been Addison. This is the Pod of Many Things. Whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever you are, I hope you're safe. I hope you're well. I hope you're having a good night. And I hope to see you again soon. Peace. I'll see you in a bit. Say bye, Zach. Bye.
Bye. Cheers for having me.
It's all right. Don't worry.